Well, good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Bobshop. Still not in the Bobshop yet because my brewing stuff has taken priority, as you can see it behind me there. Got my 3-tier setup, got my hot liquor tank boiler at the top, got my mash tun in the middle on a stool, and then I've got my fermentation vessel at the bottom there, which is going to double up as a third, just a holding container for the sparge. And then when the sparge is complete, we put that back into the boiler, so the hot liquor tank then turns into a boiler, and we do the boil. Got my laptop behind me that side for all my calculations and my beer plan. I've written out a plan for the day because this is my first all grain brew and I really didn't want to cock it up, so I've spent far too much time researching and conglomerating lots of information from the internet about temperatures and strike water temperatures and sparging temperatures and grain measurements and everything else. And as we all know, temperature is incredibly important when it comes to brewing. Got to get everything absolutely right. So in order to do that, I have just calibrated my thermometers in here. Now you're supposed to do this in slushed ice water, but I didn't have any slushed ice water, but I have got frozen beans. So it's 60%, well, the ice slush from the bottom of the beans bag and some beans, and 40% cold water, the coldest water out of the tap, as per manufacturer's instructions for this little gizmo. And both of these thermometers are now basically in agreement that this concoction here is around -1 degree, -0.9 on that one, and basically -1 on that one. So they're close enough for me to say that this one is calibrated. They're both the same, then we must be about right, I reckon. So we're up in the kitchen, got my water supply, bit more of a close-up of the system, boiler, mash tun, holding tank stroke fermentation vessel, wort chiller, a couple of blankets under there ready to throw over the mash tun for a bit of extra efficiency. Cleaned all this stuff yesterday, gave it all a good scrub out and a clean. It's not sanitised, it doesn't need to be. That needs to be sanitised after the sparge, ready to take the boiled wort, obviously to be fermented. So everything post-boil needs to be sanitised, but pre-boil everything gets sanitised when it goes through the boil, so not a problem. Testing my sparge arm, seems to work quite well, if a little bit quick, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, so very happy so far. We will crack on very, very shortly. Just going to go and measure my grains. Temperature, do the calculation to see what my strike water's got to be at, and then we'll crack on and get it going. Okay, so now I have calibrated my thermometer. I'm going to use it to measure my grain temperature, and I'm going to use the handy little calculator that there is on Jim's Beer Kit website to work out what my strike temperature is going to be. So I'm going to use the biggest bag of grain I've got because it's going to have the best thermal properties for holding the temperature of where it's been at. I'm just going to poke that in and see what it says. And just on the safe side, stick it in another bit. So I'm going to call that 16.5. Still going down. Okay, I'm going to call it 16 degrees. So, using this very handy calculator on Jim's Beer Kit, not affiliated to Jim's Beer Kit in any way, by the way. It's just a very handy website, but there's lots of others out there as well that will give you this kind of calculator. Enter the weight of grain. Well, I'm going to be using 4.3 kilos of grain. So, 4.3 kilos. Initial temperature of the grain 16 degrees C. Mash liquor 12.7. My recipe calls for 12.7 litres of mash at 65 degrees centigrade. So, bingo, my strike temperature needs to be 71.6 degrees. So that's what I'm aiming for. 71.6 degrees, which will take into account the amount of energy that will be used up heating the grain up to temperature. The difference between 16 degrees and 65 degrees, it's going to take apparently 6.6 degrees of temperature to do that. So there we go, happy days. This has now settled down to 16.1 degrees in this bag, so yeah, I'm glad I went with 16 degrees, that's pretty accurate. 71.6 degrees, happy days. Brew time. So, I have, there we go, warmed up my strike water, transferred 12.7 litres of it into my mash tun, got it up to the appropriate temperature, which was apparently 72.5 degrees. So I've transferred it into here now. Let's see what it says. Can I look at the thermometer? So it's lost a couple of degrees. You can see that 70 degrees in there, 70.3. It's lost a couple of degrees in the transfer. And now we need to add dough in our grains very carefully and stirring all the time.
So what are you adding?
So this is pale malt. The recipe calls for 4.34 kilos of pale malt. So that's what's half of it, this is about half of it going in at the moment. So stirring it constantly as it goes in, trying to not get too many lumps and bumps. Don't take too long over this. So we've got 200 grams of crystal wheat malt and 500 grams of caramel malt going in as well. Before too long, the rest of the pale malt to go in as well. Whoops, steady. I'm going to get the lid on as soon as I can. Nice thick berry porridge. We're looking for about 65 degrees would be ideal. Going 64. Okay. So the lid is going on. Blankets going on. Try and keep as much of that temperature in as we can. So 1 hour mash for this recipe. It is, according to my watch, 20 to 9 in the evening, so it's going to be a late night. But right, 1 hour to go. Going to sterilise up loads of bits and bobs while that's mashing. Get the rest of the sparge water warmed up as well for in an hour's time, and we'll go from there. Okay, so my mash has been in now for an hour, so I'm going to lift the lid on the mash. Sparge water is pretty much up to temperature, so I'm going to lift the lid on the mash and see what sort of temperature it is in there now. I did forget to preheat my mash tun, which was a bit of a schoolboy error, but what we did was put a heater underneath the mash tun to try and get some warm air up, so the outside of the mash tun was warm and the blankets was warm, and hopefully that would have counteracted that a little bit. We'll have to see. So that's an hour. Lift the blankets off. Lift the lid. Alright, smells good. Smells really good. Looks like a mash should look as far as all the videos I've seen so far. So there it is. smells amazing. Put you back over there. Right. Moment of truth time. 64.1 degrees. 64.2, so it's climbing a little bit. So really, that's been pretty successful. We've lost less than 1 degree. It's settled at 64.2. So I'm very happy with that. Very happy indeed. So now I'm going to do the Vorloff, or Lautner, as whatever they call it. So this is where you let off the first runnings till it goes clear, and then you pour them back in. I'm going to pour them back into my mash tun over this spoon with holes in, so that it won't disturb the grain bed too much. But let's see what we get. So I don't want to drain it too quickly. I want to allow the grain bed to settle right down. You can see we're gathering our first runnings in here. It's starting to run a bit clearer now. But we'll gather a whole jug, I think, just to be on the safe side. But you can see that lovely colour in there. Stuff coming through the pipe looks pretty good now. So that's my first lot of Vorloff, so I'm just going to put this back really gently, so as to try and not disturb the grain bed too much. Spread it around a bit. It does sort of look like the water is, whereas all the grains were at the top before, they're staying down and the water is gathering, or the wort rather as it is now, the wort is gathering around the top. So I'm guessing that's a good thing, means the grain bed is settled. Okay, so now I've Vorloffed. I've done a couple of recycles through with a couple of jugs. I'm now draining that really slowly down into my fermentation vessel down there, which is like a holding tank that we'll swap around in a minute. So I'm just going to drain that really slowly. It's coming out nice and clear. So yeah, next stage, and then we'll start the sparge. Hello, welcome back. Right, another costume change. It's been an interesting one, this. Due to a long-term ongoing health situation that I have, I've had to go and spend a few days in hospital. So the other night we got the brew done, we got the sparge done, and we got all of our wort into our boiler, but we didn't do the boil. But essentially, by this point, it is just sugary water with all the stuff in it. So as long as it doesn't go mouldy, excuse me, it will be fine. So, however it is, we are going to do the boil now and continue where we left off, and we will just see what happens and how it ends up. And hopefully, it will end up being a decent beer. It's had a lid on it, it's had an airlock in it, so it should be fine, but we will wait and see. So it's all been very interesting. It's not been the smoothest and the most perfect of first brews ever, or first all grain brews, but it is what it is, and it will be what it will be, and we will find out how it tastes in some weeks' time. But now it's time to crack on with the boil. So let's set it off. Smells like beer. Looks like beer. Certainly doesn't smell like it's off. It just definitely smells like the mash, really, sort of biscuity and sweet. And it should be fine. Right. Get the boiler plugged in. Okay. It's a bit of sort of froth on top. Not quite sure what that is, but I'm expecting there to be the hot break anyway. So now the elements are on. We will wait and see what the hot break does. Just going to sort out my heather. I need 75 grams of heather for the start and 75 grams for the end. I cut all this a few days ago, so it's probably dried out a bit since. Yeah, that's pretty good. Close to 2 lots of 75 grams as I'm going to get. Pretty happy with that. So here we have the additions for the boil. We've got 75 grams of heather, fresh heather tips there. Another 75 grams which go on at flame out. We've got 41 grams of Goldings hops which go in at the beginning with one of the 75 gram lots of heather. We've got another 20 grams of Goldings hops to go in at flame out. Fraoch tablet for about 15 minutes before the end. And lastly, some bog myrtle. There's 25 grams in there. I need 20 grams for the recipe, so I'll chuck basically most of it in. So there's my additions ready to go. I've already got this really thick layer of foam on top here, which presumably is just the proteins and everything settled out around about the top. I hope that's all it is. The water is obviously the wort is warming up. It's quite warm now, but it's not boiling yet. It's not even bubbling yet. It's not even starting to bubble. So I'm a little bit worried about boilovers because it's quite fluffy already. We'll see. So we're getting there. We are approaching our boil point. I've got my timer set already. I've got my mobile phone on over on the bench over there with 55 minutes, because that's once the hot break is done, it'll be 55 minutes till the next addition. So that's all set up and ready to go. While this has all been messing about and waiting for this, I've got my FV down there with the BWP in it, so that's all getting sterile, and another spoon and my thermometer, one of my thermometers, all getting sterilised, ready for after the boil. Smelling really good now. It's amazing just what a little bit of heat in it just starts to release those the flavours and the smells. Okay, we have achieved boil. We have 2 boiling areas, and I am just keeping a hawk eye on this. Yeah, we are right up at boil now. Just going to flick that one off. We've lost a lot of the froth, as you can see. A lot of it has absorbed back in, which is brilliant. We've avoided a boil over. So far, we've avoided a boil over. Took a fair old while to reach boil though. It's been going 45-50 minutes, but then I guess it had cooled right back down to room temperature. Obviously, had we been able to carry on the other night, it would have been up at the sparge temperature pre-boil, so it would have been up at 65, 70 odd degrees by the time it would have gone into the boiler. So the boil point would have been a lot quicker. Yeah, I'm going to say hop break achieved. So, in with first additions, which is 41 grams of the hops and 75 grams of heather. So in goes the heather. Smells kind of interesting. And in goes the hops, which smell amazing. Okay, start the timer, 55 minutes. We're making beer. Proper beer. Okay, so the boil is going really well. We're just about to get to the end of the 55 minutes, which is the first section of the boil, at which point I will add the fraoch tablet and stick my chiller in and give that 15 minutes in the boil to sterilise the chiller and all the rest of it. So I'll get my tablet ready. Timer's about to go off. There you go, right on cue. So drop one of those in. And get that out of the way. In with the chiller. A little bit concerned about this sitting on the element, but something like that, I suppose. That's probably not on the element at that end. That's my smoke alarm going off because it's so steamy in here. I'll be right back. Okay, well that was a bit dramatic. All the smoke alarms went off in the house on account of all the steam in the kitchen. Luckily my little boy stayed asleep, so that was good. The water chiller is in, the fraoch is in. We've got about 10 minutes left to let this boil finish, and then we'll add the final additions at flame out, which are over there. And yeah, then we turn the chiller on, and then we do some more waiting. Okay, we are nearly done. We've got 5 seconds left on the boil, and then we are done. We are down to, there's the timer, officially flame out. And there we go, boil done. We are down to 24 litres from about 28 litres, so that's not bad at all. So, final additions go in. "21 grams of hops, 20 grams of sweet gale or bog myrtle, depending on what you want to call it, and another 75 grams of homegrown heather. Sterilised spoon. We are done. So we'll start up the chiller, we'll get that going, monitor the temperature, and according to this yeast, using White Labs yeast, This one says, I think it was 21 to 24, yeah. So this is enough yeast for the 5 gallons. Get the wort down to 21 to 24, which is a little bit warmer than a lot of yeast pitching, around sort of 18, 19. So we'll get this down, throw the yeast in, well no, we'll get it down, transfer it, throw the yeast in, stick it in the fridge, and then go to bed. Okay, chiller going on. Ooh, that is hot. So I don't want it to be going on the flow rate too fast, because I want the water to take a nice long amount of time to get down and through, to take the maximum amount of heat out. Also, I don't want to waste too much water, so that's now on. The end of this hose is very hot. I'm going to throw that into my mash tun to give that a clean. Yes, my mash tun was dirty for the last 3 days. I know. Safety bugger. But there you go. That's what happens when you end up going to hospital. Alright, so this is now chilled down to about 26, 27 degrees. Sanitised all of this stuff, the jug, the pipe, the bucket, the fermentation vessel, all clean, all sanitised, all ready to rock and roll. And what I'm going to do, because I've read a little bit about this draining, is I'm actually going to kind of effectively do another boil off and take the first little bit of runnings real slow and let all the hotbed settle in the boiler, and then recirculate that back before draining into the FV. So I'm going to do that now. One final little temperature check. I'm aiming for about 22 degrees in the FV. It's about 26.5, 27 in that. So by the time it's been through the pipe and recirculated and then gone back through the pipe into the FV and it's all cooled down, hopefully that will have lost those last couple of degrees, and then I may just have to sit and wait for another 10-15 minutes to get down to the right temperature, but we'll crack on. I'm just going to let that run really, really slowly. While we're waiting, I'll show you where we're at. You can see it's kind of cleared quite nicely. It was really quite murky. Well, obviously whilst it's boiling, it's all churning up. But post boil, it was really quite murky. As it's cooled, it's cleared. Everything's settled. Quite happy with that. So I'll run off 3 or 4 litres of the first runnings, put them back in very, very carefully, and then run off to the FV. Right, it's all drained. We've ended up with just a touch over 20 litres in the FV, which is a little bit less than we were hoping for, but it's good to find out these things, so we know that we're going to have a little bit more boil volume next time, and to end up with a little bit more post-boil, so that we end up with more in our FV. So that's good, but it's in and it looks nice and it smells nice, and it's a little bit too warm still. It's around 26 degrees, 27-ish. So it didn't actually lose a lot of temperature during the transfer like I was hoping for. So we will just give it a little bit more time to cool down. I could stick the chiller in, I suppose, for a small amount, but the chiller's got stuff all over it. And if I rinse it, it won't be sterile anymore. So we're just going to have to sit and wait for a bit of time until it's down to the right temperature. It gives me time to clean all this stuff up, so hey ho, all needs doing anyway, doesn't it? Right then, it's getting very late. It's now 10 to 1 in the morning. The wort is down where we need it at last. So I'm going to aerate it, I'm going to pop the yeast into it, and it's going in the beer fridge. There we go. Lots of lovely air in there. In you go, lovely yeasties. just to be sure we've got everything out of the yeast vial. There we go. Lid on. Smells amazing. Keep saying that, but it does. It smells wonderful. Lid on, and that can go into the beer fridge, which you've seen in the other video. Test my gravity. About 1053. As I write my OG on the lid with the date, which is, I have no idea. It is now the 21st, the early hours of 21st of May, 15. OG 1053, and that is going in the beer fridge, and I am going to bed. A little taste of this first though. Ooh, interesting. Very nice. Definitely getting the floral heather and the bog myrtle. Nice bit of hoppy aftertaste. Got high hopes for this one. Good night, folks. See you on the next episode of the Bobshop, whatever it may be that we'll be doing in that episode. As yet, I don't quite know, but it'll be up soon, hopefully. And that is it for beer. Good night.